Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, it's 11 o'clock. I was sitting down at 7 to do this and got a very frantic call from a 17-year-old. She was in a car accident. She's okay. Somebody pulled out in front of her and she didn't have time to stop. So his car had to be towed. Her car is kind of a hot mess right now, but she's okay. Just got some bruised knees, definitely some whiplash. We're going to go first thing in the morning to the doctor to get her checked out. Her dad's a doctor and said it can wait, nothing too crazy right now. So very thankful she's good. And if you see smoke back here, I'm totally burning sage right now because I need this bad juju out my house, y'all. Okay. So a couple of things real quick. Patreon. If you guys didn't hear today, I was talking about starting a Patreon perk page. And from the beginning, we've always said we would never charge for content, and we will never charge for content. Episodes will always be free. What it is over the last, month and a half, 2 months, it's been a while. I've been getting a lot of emails and inboxes of people asking me, like, please do a Patreon because I don't want to hear your ads. And so I understand that because I don't like ads either. But instead of charging for episodes, I chose to put ads in that are skippable. And that's how I'm able to do what I do instead of charging members for actual content. So it's a perk thing. Let's go through these levels real quick in case you didn't watch the video earlier today. So we have 3 different levels that you can join. So your first level is $5 a month. That's ad-free episodes, a monthly live chat, ask me anything. You get a Patreon shout out, a private community on Discord to just discuss cases and just sit back and chill. And then you always have 10% off all the merchandise in the store. All right, your second tier, $15 a month. And so you get everything I said before. We're going to do a live chat, ask me anything every 2 weeks, a monthly live stream, and then 15% off all merchandise at all times. Then the $25 a month tier, which is the highest, you get all that stuff that I just said. We're going to do a weekly chat, ask me anything. We're going to do a weekly live stream. We're going to do 20% off all merchandise and a free logo t-shirt if you do that. Not everybody can afford to do that. So I really just kind of wanted to do something that was very basic if you didn't want ads. But then I talked to a lot of different podcast listeners as well as creators and asked the listeners mainly, what features would you want for each level? And this is sort of collectively what we came up with. I just talked to the people that reached out with me. So if you don't join, that's cool. I'm still going to do lives every month starting next month for regular members who are regular listeners, rather. And I don't want to say regular. You guys are awesome. But for people who choose not to do the Patreon, still going to do lives. You're not going to miss any special content, any episodes. This is just perk based. And so I wanted to kind of find a happy medium to make everybody happy. And, so yeah, I'm excited about that. And I think I might have it up and running tomorrow, actually. So keep an eye out. I'll put the link out. And I will do a YouTube short to let you know. So if you don't subscribe to YouTube, go ahead and subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends. And then if you hit that subscribe button when I do these little shorts, which I plan to do a lot of because they're very convenient, you'll get an alert and you won't miss one. All right. Other news of the day before we get into our music fact and then testimony. Melanie's Pulowski. Computer tampering charges, they were dismissed. We know nothing more than that. Go figure. All right. Music fact of the day. I did not know this. And I was blown away. So Madonna asked Prince to work with her on her hit song, which I love, Like a Prayer. And so the guitar you hear at the very beginning before the door slams is Prince playing the guitar. So what happened is Madonna sent him something to play on, and he played on it and sent it back. And they just didn't feel what he did served kind of the purpose of it, but that piece at the beginning is totally him, and they thought it was such a cool and crazy piece that that they kept it in. He is not credited for his contribution to Like a Prayer. There have been rumors there is a version he did of Like a Prayer floating around. I would love to hear that. All right, so let's get into day 12 testimony. So today we finished up all the crime scenes. We ended with Kenneth Rhoden. And so Special Agent Ed Staley was on the stand, and Kenneth was 799 Left Fork Road. It was a little bit further away than all the Rhoden residences. So this gentleman was called around 2 p.m. on April 22nd to assist the investigation. And he arrived on scene at about 5:45. I don't think he lived right there. So it took him a little while to drive. So he talked about the gravel driveway was about 1/8 of a mile long, leading to a hillside area. Then there was a clearing where the camper was located, where he was shot and killed in. And while taking photography outside, he saw an electronic device on a tree in the bottom right corner. You can see that. And if you remember, when his son testified, he said that his dad had a sensor kind of towards the bottom of the driveway that would make an audible alert to let him know if somebody was approaching the residence. So there was a shed and some trailers on the property, and he had there was a security light on the property, but he didn't know if it was active. So there was a shed and also some trailers on the property. And so this was the grow house essentially. And so on the top left, you can see that shed. It had stairs going down underground into a basement where the weed was being grown. This is pretty small scale stuff. It's not huge. The whole cartel theory is kind of laughable when you see the amount of marijuana they were growing. Also, if you look, there was a trail cam bracket right there that was missing. And they also found a key fob and some keys on the steps of the shed. That shed had 2 cameras on the front and back side, maybe one more. There was no evidence of forced entry into that shed. So inside the door, there was another set of keys on the threshold. And so down in the stairs, it was really dark when they went down in there. The surveillance cameras that were on the exterior, they were not plugged in. So the DVR was unplugged, and the agent said it literally had cobwebs all over it, and it was clear it had not been used recently. So to the right of the residence trailer door was a small window. We're going to his actual trailer now. And if you see there, his son also testified about this. There's a cell phone propped up against the glass. And he said that was the only place his dad could get a signal in that trailer. So he kept his phone there. There were no signs of forced entry on the door. And so they start showing the jury photos, which we can't see. They show inside the trailer, obviously, the entryway. Then there's an open top drawer in the dresser that they see. And there is a white object sticking out of that drawer. So that actually was the alarm portion of that sensor at the bottom of the driveway. And the sensor was working when investigators tested it. So on the photo of the bed, there was money, clothing, and keys on the mattress with Kenneth's body. The pocket of the jeans were turned out. If you've ever been in a camper, a sleeper camper, you know there's not much room between the bed and the wall. It's very narrow. And then they show a photo of Kenneth's body in the bed. They found a cartridge case on the right side of that bed. So looking at Kenneth himself, the right eye is completely just gone, and the left eye is partially open. So this agent kind of studied blood flow and spatter patterns as part of his job, and he believes he was found in the position he was killed in, which is likely asleep. There was a red area around his eye, which is stippling, where that end of that muzzle was right next to his eye or close. And he also They also found a work light that was turned on laying on the floor below the window in the bedroom. And they also used that Faro scanner in his trailer to make that 3D image and to measure points. Both parties stipulate that the lock and the keys for the shed had no DNA on the lock. There was a combination of DNA on the key, with Kenneth being the main contributor. The key fob and key found near the shed did not have sufficient DNA for testing. And a padlock found near the front door of the trailer had no sufficient DNA. If you remember, he typically left his door unlocked at night. During the day when he would leave for work, he would padlock that door. So the evidence inside the trailer, they found money and keys, blue jeans with pockets turned out, the mixture of DNA with Kenneth being the main contributor. The cell phone that we just showed was not sent for testing. And then they found that cartridge case. It was a .40 caliber bullet. They also did a blind swab of Kenneth's wrist and hands to see if he was grabbed or if there was a struggle. And the agent said there's only one chance to get that swab. So he wanted to do that. They found no signs of a struggle, and only Kenneth's DNA was found on his arms and his hands. There was a reddish brown stain on the wall in the trailer, which was about a foot of the way from the bed. And I'm assuming that's blood. I don't think I heard that. But he did not assist in the removal of Kenneth's body from the scene. This was a really small scene compared to the others, because it was a single gunshot. It was a small trailer. It was one victim. And so on cross, the defense shows an aerial photo of Kenneth's property. And he asks about the smaller camper to the left that I don't know if I got a picture of. I'm scrolling through. Where there was a small camper to the left of where Kenneth lived. And he asked if they went in and photographed it. He said he thinks they went in, but did not take photographs. The defense asked, did it appear if anybody was living in it? And the agent said no. So the defense says, from the roadway, did you do any exterior measurements from the roadway to the trailer? And he said no. He said that actually could be taken from the Faro scanner, but he didn't know the distance offhand of what it was. So from the defense said, from the area behind the 3 cars on the property to the front door to the trailer, did you measure that? No, but the Faro scanner could tell you. So the defense says you didn't do any independent measurements, and he said no. The defense asked, you arrived at 5:45 p.m. Do you know what time it got dark? And he said no. So how long were you there before it got dark? And he said it was a few hours or so. The defense says you've been briefed, so you knew what to expect. And the agent said to a degree, he knew what had happened just in a general sense along the crime scenes. So the defense says you discussed taking the photos. Did you enter any building before taking photos? He said no. The defense says you entered the shed with marijuana growing, and was there an odor of marijuana? And the agent said there's fresh marijuana. There was a very heavy fresh marijuana smell, but not a processed smell. And the defense asked if there's a difference in that smell, and he said yes. So the defense says you found various keys on the bed, on the steps outside the grow house. Did you match the keys to where they went? And he said no. The defense said in the trailer, you made a right to go up the stairs. Was it dark in there? And he said not completely dark, but it was darker. And the defense says you saw a work light that was on, and he said yeah. Defense asked no other lights were on in the trailer, and he says I don't believe so. Then the defense asked, do you know the width of the stairs going up to where the body was found? And again, he said it was narrow, but the Faro scanner could measure that. So the defense says, let's go back to the grow room. Did anyone go in before you arrived? And he said, I have no knowledge of that. And the defense said, when you documented the exterior, you went around the back. Had you seen evidence a four-wheeler had been on that property? And he said no. The defense says you pointed out the device connected to the motion sensor near the driveway and it was operating. The agent said yes. And then the defense asked, did you make a recording of the sound it makes? And he said no. So the defense says the bed appears not to have had any sheets on it, correct? just the comforter, and the agent says that's correct. And then the defense says there appears to be a platform the mattress is resting on. Is that correct? And he says yes. The defense also points out there was a clear bottle of water on a table right by that bed. That's where you found it. It wasn't placed there by anyone. He says no. And then the defense says that's an indication there was no struggle. So the agent said, well, it could be. If there was a struggle, would it be fair to say that would have been knocked off? And the agent, he said, I'll give you that. He was pretty cool. The defense says, so the only interior light was the work light. Did you take photos of the room once it became dark that night? And the agent said, I don't believe so. So the defense shows a diagram of the inside of the trailer, and the victim was in a diagonal position in the bed. And he says, yes, the cartridge casing was on the right side of the bed. And the agent said, yes. So on redirect, other than his hands and the wall beside his bed, that's the only place you did swabs on. And he said, yes. The prosecutor said, I'm sorry, not the defense, the prosecutor. The prosecutor said, you were asked about the shell casing. Is there any way to tell what direction the pistol kicks out a shell casing? And he said, we don't really use that logic anymore. There was a study years ago that said it was only correct about 25% of the time as far as where that gun kicked that shell casing. So the prosecutor says you fired a gun more than once. Is it fair to say you can guess where a pistol will kick out a shell? And he answers, there's just too many variables, like the position of the gun, the angle of the gun, the level of the gun. There's a lot of things that go into why a casing falls where it does. And they were also talking, the prosecutor also asked about ceiling height. And he asked, is there a fair chance that the casing could have bounced off the ceiling? And he said yes. So time for our paid sponsor of the week, Everlywell. I love this place, y'all. And if you're on Patreon, ad free. So we're going to do our paid sponsor, Everlywell. When you know more, you can do more. What if you could use science to discover more about your body? Find out what you need for your healthier tomorrow with Everlywell. Everlywell is digital healthcare designed for you at an affordable and transparent price. With over 30 at-home lab tests, you'll be able to choose the test that makes the most sense for you to get the answers you need, like the women's health test or food sensitivity test. I did the women's health test, found it out. My 45-year-old rear end needed some hormones. Feel much better. Everlywell also has high-quality vitamins and supplements to support your overall health. Choose from a variety of options, including vitamin D3 and omega-3 fish oil. Here's how it works. Everlywell ships products straight to you with everything needed in one package. To take your at-home lab test, simply collect your sample and use the included prepaid shipping label to mail your test back to a certified lab. Your physician-reviewed results get sent to your phone or device in just days. It took mine too. And you could share the results with your primary care doctor to help guide those next steps. If you ordered vitamins and supplements, you can start adding them right away to your daily routine. It's simple. Over 1 million people have trusted Everlywell to support their health and wellness goals, and you should too. And for every listener of my show, Everlywell is offering a special discount of 20% off an at-home lab test at everlywell.com/whattheworld. That's everlywell.com/whattheworld for 20% off your next at-home lab test. everlywell.com/whattheworld. All right. So we're going to move into Dr. Karen Looman, and she is the deputy coroner. I love this lady. She knows her stuff, and I really have enjoyed listening to her. She is very layman terms on the stand, which is a rarity sometimes in these cases. So actually, the prosecution sort of backtracks and asks about Hannah Mae first. You remember we talked about that mark on the back of her head where it was laying against a hard surface on the last episode we did about the crime scene where she was? Well, her head was pressed on the headboard of her bed, and it was poles. So it wasn't solid. It was slatted poles, metal poles. And she, Dr. Looman said her head is pressed on the headboard of her bed. She was laying mostly on her side with her head against the headboard. So they show a close-up picture of that to the jury, and it shows her bar. The bar is resting above her ear. So the prosecutor said, "Would that be consistent with the mark you found on the back of her head?" And she says, "Yes." And the prosecution wants to know why. So she says her head is leaning. When you're alive, the dent would go away. But because she was dead, it didn't. And it also had a brown color around it. And that indicates she was deceased when that mark happened. It could happen because if you're shot, you could fall back and hit your head on that, or you could just settle and lean your head against the railing. I think that's going to come in because if you remember, Jake said in his confession, she saw him, doesn't know if she recognized him, but then the defense in the last hearing was kind of questioning that of her position. All right, so let's jump into Kenneth's autopsy. His body arrived to them at 6:36 a.m. on Saturday. His autopsy was Sunday around 12:40. That would have been on the 24th. So his condition at the beginning of the autopsy was slightly decomposed, and he had very little rigor mortis left, and he was nude. He had a single gunshot wound to the right eye. He had dry blood coming from his nose to the left side of his face. And they showed the jury a photo of him face down with that blood pooling on his right shoulder and spots on the left of his back and left arm that also showed a little bit of that blood pooling. So after they clean him up during the autopsy, they see stippling on the underside, mostly of his eye, some on the upper eyelid and forehead, and the wound is black around the eyelid. And it's an intermediate distance, which is 3 inches to 3 feet. Remember, she said the muzzle could affect how close it was. It could have been just touching the skin. We don't know. The angle of the entry was front to back and slightly right to left. It ended up in the middle of the back of his head, stuck. It broke the bone in the back of his head, but it did not exit. The damage from his right eye broke the eye plate and bone underneath, which is where the middle ear is, and fractured a lot of the right side of his skull, and the brain was perforated by the bullet, which caused lacerations of the brain tissues and bleeding. So in this bottom right picture, if you see the darker ink and the arrow pointing to the bullet, all that darker ink is just where his skull was fractured in a bad way. And so this would have been an immediately fatal wound for Kenneth. And she does think he was asleep when it happened because the bullet went through his eyelids. And there were no other injuries to his body. The bullet was in a large piece and then a smaller piece that broke off. The bullet was larger than the ones used on Dana's family, but similar to those used on Chris Sr. and Gary. And also, she found one of those red plastic plugs like they did with Chris and Gary. So toxicology reports showed caffeine, presumptive positive for amphetamines, but it was a false positive due to the decomposition of his blood. And that happened to a couple of the other victims as well. So x-rays, they show those to the jury. We can't even see x-rays, y'all. Lame. So front to back view shows the bullet fragment under his right eye. And then another film shows his face turned just a bit and the bullet is visible at the back of his head. Another film, they just show he had no neck trauma. Cause of death, single gunshot wound to the head. And the prosecutor asked, "What do you do with the bullet when you take it out?" And she said, "We cleaned it off because it has blood and tissue on it." Then they take photos and put it in a box. BCI took that to do their own testing on it. So on cross-exam, he asked about the stippling found on his eyelid, and it means the gunshot came from the closer end of the 3-inch to 3-foot range, and she agrees with that. He also talks about Hannah Mae's head dent, and he asks if it maybe is because she was rearranged after being murdered, and she said it was possible because Jake confessed that after he murdered her, he moved her body to where her 5-day-old baby could still try to nurse. Just psychopath. All right. So the next witness was Matt White from BCI. Number one, this dude had an epic beard game. Not even going to lie. This is his beard. It was amazing. So ballistics, we're going to get into ballistics real quick. And with a 40 caliber bullet, they show a photo of one taken apart. And guess what I have here, guys? I have one. Okay, this is not quite the same. That red tip would have went right in there. But this is a 40 caliber from a Glock. It's just a different company. But that is the size of the bullet that went into his eye. So I'm literally just like gonna do this. And I know it's kind of creepy, but I'm gonna show you. You got to imagine that thing's coming at you with amazing speed. And that red tip is designed to splinter off and it just causes maximum damage. So, let me flip back to ballistics. Again, I'll put all these pictures in the description with a link. So that 40 caliber bullet is a jacketed hollow point with a red polymer tip, which makes the bullet expand when it hits the target and it creates maximum damage to the victim. I mean, this thing is heavy. I'm sitting here holding it right now. It's very heavy. And so this isn't even the red tip. This is just a hollow thing that doesn't have that red. This is not my bullet. I used to be very anti-gun, like all the way around, but I'm gonna tell you, I got me a revolver. I'm Annie Oakley. It's very responsibly placed in my house. My kids have no clue where it is, but if somebody wants to come try to break in my house and you get past the security cameras, which are all over, and you get past my 2 dogs, one of which is 100 pounds and would rip your arm off, it's not gonna be pretty if you make it to my room. Let's just say that. I'm very responsible. I have a CWP, and I cannot believe I'm saying that I own a gun because even a year ago I would not have. But there you go. So he goes through how all the bullets are fired and how markings are made on it. It's very technical. It would take 20 minutes, and I just didn't think you guys would want to go through that. So crime scene number 1 was Chris Sr. and Gary. There was a 30 caliber. 762 by 30 millimeter round, which is a high powered ammo, which is used with rifles. And so you think about it with Chris Sr.'s arm being so ripped to shreds, that's probably what was used on him. The jacket was different than a bullet of a similar brand and size. And the bullet had a bow tail design on the end to help with aerodynamics. This is for that 30 caliber 762 by 30 millimeter. Bullets lose weight when they're fired, but these 30 caliber bullets weighed more even after being damaged than an unfired typical bullet. So the agent found a tool ammo, I believe that's how you say that, brand that fit the heavier bullets. So he kind of figured out that it was just a different brand that was heavier. And the bullets the coroner recovered during autopsy from Chris Sr. and Gary were those 40 caliber pistol rounds, and they were consistent with a Hornady brand that has a red plastic plug in the tip of the bullet. So essentially, Chris Sr., Gary, and Kenneth were killed with this kind of bullet. And then Chris Sr.'s arm was the other ammo. So on the diagram here, you can see just the inner workings of these bullets. Frankie and Hannah Hazel, Dana, Hannah Mae, and little Chris were all killed with 22 caliber bullets. And he talks technical again about the markings, about the spin, and how many little spots were on there they could count. So Kenneth was killed with that 40 caliber Hornady brand round. Again, it's big. It's heavy, y'all. It's on a loan from my brother. But yeah, so that's it right there. We're responsible gun owners. We don't shoot around neighborhoods. We go to a firing range and that's it. And it's just for protection. So that was kind of it for today. It wasn't because Kenneth's crime scene was the smallest of all. It was the shortest testimony, crime scene and autopsy wise. I think tomorrow this ballistics agent is going to be recalled. We don't know who else is up next, but thank goodness for the last few days, excuse me, everybody's opted in to being recorded. So it's been easy to cover. Take note, Judge Boyce, give us some audio or something. Anyway, so tomorrow, I'm hoping to launch this Patreon. I'm really excited. I think we'll have fun. Just going to throw some goofy videos in there and then just some lives and little group chats. And if you can't join, that's totally cool because nothing's going to change from where you are right now. This is just little perks at the request of a lot of our members. So, anyways, guys, I hope you have an awesome evening. We'll see you tomorrow and sleep tight.